Well, hello everybody. I thought today I'd just follow up on something I was talking about a while ago on will this business survive? Because it has been touch and go. We scraped through Christmas, and the business will survive, but in what form is still to be decided. So I'll tell you what's been happening and why it's so difficult, why it's so tricky. Now, when I started this, I went in with a very strong plan and a good idea and of how we would sell things, and everything was tested. Before I started, I read a lot of history, the business history of toy companies that had failed. Two of them really stood out for me. One was Matchbox, which was a British company that made little cars, and the other was Anki, which is a robotics and artificial intelligence company that had the world's best-selling toy, and they struggled. So I'll tell you the Matchbox story first. So Matchbox in post-World War Britain, small company set up that they were making die-cast machine parts, and they started making toy cars. And these toy cars became a massive hit. They were pocket money prices. They weren't only sold in toy shops, they could be sold at tobacconists and newsagents, and kids loved these things. And they went down this route of being very accurate and trying to copy real vehicles. And the biggest market was in America. So this little British company went from nothing to growing to really big and then selling all of their products in America. And then in America, a rival company came out called Hot Wheels. And Hot Wheels made cool vehicles. They were like fantastic colors, and they were aspirational vehicles, the sort of car you really wanted to drive, cool racing cars, where Britain was, boring, dull. Oh, look, it's got a horse box. It's like something on a farm. It was rubbish. And like by comparison, it wasn't aspirational. So Matchbox were now in this position where they had to retool and change their products entirely. And what happened was that cost a fortune to do. And then the currency markets changed and went against them. So after spending millions of pounds retooling their factory to make this new toy that they were then wanted to sell in America, they couldn't afford to sell it in America. Eventually Matchbox Toys went bankrupt, and they had a famous factory which was very close to where I live, and they smashed a hole through the roof so they could lift the die casting machines out through the ceiling, where they were all sent to China and repurposed. So that was the end of Matchbox. Anki's more interesting. Anki made the Vector and Cosmo little robots, and they made a system called Overdrive, which was like slot car racing, but very high tech, and you controlled them with your mobile phone. And their problem was they had difficulties in explaining the product to people, and they also had problems with the vast majority of their sales came at Christmas.
There's a lot of things you could point to that were like, pretty big successes. Sold millions of units, got to like pretty serious revenue, like kind of close to 100 million annual revenue. Number one kind of product in kind of various categories, but it was pretty expensive. It ended up being very seasonal, where something like 85% of our volume was in Q4 because it was a present, and it was expensive to market it and explain it and so forth. And even though the volume was like really sizable and like the reviews were really fantastic, forecasting and planning for it and managing the cash operations was just brutal.
Now, having read these stories, I realized that the one thing I needed to do in order to grow slowly and carefully was I need consistent sales. And one of the things that I find is that I can be featured in a magazine for the blind, for example, or on a discussion board, and I get lots of sales. But then I need a way to fill the gap so that I make the exact number of sales each month. And the reason for that is it takes me around 3 months. So from the moment I start buying components to then manufacturing, taking delivery, selling them, and getting the money, it's about 90 days of cash flow that I need. I start spending money and I don't get any money back for 90 days. So what I need to do is think about 3 months ahead. So we're now coming to the start of March. So I need to think about not for March, not for April, not for May, but for June. I'm buying components now for the systems I'm going to sell in June. So I need to pick a figure. So let's say I chose 100. So I'm going to sell 100 of these. And then what would happen is, let's say I sold 30 through word of mouth, I then need to be able to advertise to sell another 70, so that I always do exactly what I've planned for. And I realized this was the way to make sure that we had consistency. If I do that, I can survive. And something happened. When we started back in, so after the Kickstarter, so about August, September last year, absolutely flying. Everything's going brilliantly. And we advertise through Meta platforms, so Facebook, but it's Instagram, it's in people's game apps, it's in all sorts of things. The adverts are going out through Meta platforms. And what was happening was Meta were bringing in a brand new system called Andromeda. And the way it used to work, the way the advertising worked, was I chose an audience and I said, okay, let's start with people who like toys, and of those people, people who also like adventure gaming, and of those people, people who like electronics and gadgets, and of those people, people who like audiobooks, and of those people, people who listen to radio dramas. So we went from this, it was like a funnel, and we were able to target people who really, really appreciated this device. So everything's working fine. Facebook then changed their system to something called Andromeda, and this was really in response to, they had so many adverts, and as well, a lot of adverts were being AI generated, so they were seeing more than ever. They needed a new way to do it, so they created a new system. And the new system creates 3 buckets. It's people who are new, who haven't seen your product before, people that are engaged, so they might have commented or visited the website or watched the video, and then people who are existing customers. And we've got these 3 buckets. And I don't tell it who to target anymore. What it does, it uses AI to scan my advert and says, okay, we think we know who would like this. They then start showing it to people, and then those people would help to train their algorithm. This person doesn't like it, these people, but these people do. And it tries to find the right people. Here's what I think is my big problem. In my original funnel, I was trying to go to the people who really appreciate this, who are people of blind or low vision. It's not just for people who are blind or low vision, but that's my niche, that's what I'm targeting. And Facebook doesn't allow you to target for a disability or a health issue like that. It was prohibited, but it didn't matter, because with my funnel, it was finding them. Andromeda, I think, is deliberately avoiding those people. And I say that because in my old original funnel, I used to get lots of people who were blind, low vision, sending messages and commenting and saying, I saw you on Facebook. I love it. I think this is great. All of those messages have stopped. We don't get any. So we're definitely not hitting those people anymore. And this started to be a problem in the run-up to Christmas. And thinking about what happened with Anki, I thought, I need to scale back, because if this goes wrong, it will really go wrong. And what I discovered with Anki, what I've discovered for myself, is if you're selling, if you're in it's the scale of your business. If you're doing thousands of pounds a month in revenue and things go wrong, you have thousands of pounds of losses. If you're dealing in tens of thousands of pounds, you have tens of thousands of losses. If you're dealing in hundreds of thousands of pounds, you have hundreds of thousands of losses. So it becomes very important to scale at the correct speed. And somehow, because I've done all this research and all this thinking about the way this works, and watching what happened with Anki and with Matchbox, and I was thinking, I need to scale back just in case something goes wrong. And that turned out to be very fortuitous, because we scraped through Christmas. But all the business sensibilities were saying scale going into Christmas and manufacture more, and we would have now been sitting with boxes of audio adventures and no sales. And we would have struggled. So we kind of struggle now, but we struggle at a small scale where we can keep going. So it's not a business ending problem. It's just a pain. It's a thorn in my side. I need to figure out new sales avenues, because the sales avenue I'd decided on it originally and worked with and made work and had it all working, changed the algorithm, and suddenly I'm I'm floundering and struggling. It's okay, because we know we have a winning product. I mean, the amount of messages I get, the reviews, people love this. They really do love it. It's just we have to make sure that we don't fall because we've tried to expand too quickly. So my two big problems this year was get the advertising working and then manufacture the games faster or create new games faster. They're my two big problems, which is kind of nice because it used to be hundreds of problems. I had so many problems to solve every day, and it was trying to just prioritize them. Now I have two big problems, and they will be solved because I make sure that we're always going to be in business to solve them. That's one of the things. It's like I think it's that Steve Jobs thing. I may have mentioned this before. Steve Jobs loved people who built companies, and I want to build a company, and not just a product and then move on to the next product. Like, let's build a real company here. And building the real company means staying in business through thick and thin. Things get difficult, we have to stay in business no matter what. And Christmas was the first challenge, and we managed to get through it. So now it's just to fix these problems.
When you really like talk to a lot of the founders, like everybody goes through those moments, and sometimes it really is a matter of like timing, a little bit of luck. Like some things are just out of your control, and you get a much deeper appreciation for just the dimensionality of that challenge.